thank you all for joining this ControlUp Community Meetup. This is our 8th meetup, and we haven't done one for a while, but I promise we're going to be doing these on a regular basis, hopefully monthly. Although September is a little bit tricky because there's a lot of events. Are you doing a lot of events in September, Simon?
September, October, November is like
Yeah,
back to back, nothing but
boom,
events. Yeah, yeah.
just solid. So October is a little bit less for me. On November too. So we'll definitely have them. But September will be we might miss it. But that said, we're really excited today to have Simon Townsend on the line with us, and he's going to talk about what's new and upcoming, and we'll also take your Q&A. So if you have any questions whatsoever, please ask. Simon, next slide. But I want to steal a couple of his minutes, talk real quickly about the ControlUp community and what we're doing here. First of all, we do meetups like this. And like I said, we're going to do more of these things. We're going to talk about that in a second. But the community is really for you. It's a place for you from the technical side of things to learn and stay up to date on what's going on within ControlUp. To get help fast, ask questions, talk to the employees, talk to and meet other like-minded folks, things of that nature. Simon, hit the space bar. I think I have animation there. But there's so much more we can do in there too. You know, like I mentioned, you can ask questions. We have the beta program in there, knowledge base. We're doing the meetups. Someday we'll do in-person events too. And then, of course, stay up to date with what's new. So from the technical side, if you're a techie, please come and join us. Next slide. Today, we're up to 2,200 members, almost 2,300, 180 ControlUp employees. A lot of our product managers and key personnel are in there. We have 2,100 published messages posted. So those are in our public channels, 25,000 reactions plus. Really amazing. And we have so many places in the globe. We get Russia. If Russia stops being aggressors, then we can have almost the whole world black. Next slide. And we also started doing some podcasts. The podcast show called ControlUp Community Radio is really focused on EUC and DEX. We've had Simon on the show twice, his first day, and then 6 months later. I guess we'll have you back at the end of the year and do a 12 months. So every 6 months, we bring Simon on the show. Also, other industry experts. We had Mark Templeton, the former CEO of Citrix, Andrew Wood, which is another great guy, Jed. It's just some amazing people on the podcast, and we're going to be doing those every 2 weeks. So we have one coming on Friday. Stay tuned for that on controlcommunity.com or subscribe on iTunes, all those places, Spotify. Next slide.
That picture makes me sad, Doug. I think it's pre-COVID, and I know I'm definitely a lot smaller and slimmer back then,
I
and
was
look
too.
a lot younger than we do now, right?
Absolutely. So future meetups, we want to do these things on a regular basis, monthly basis. I have a list of things I want to do. I've asked around to some people internally, but really these are for you. I want to know what you want. Please let me know, db@controlup.com. If you have any ideas, just email me them. If you'd like to be a part of it, we want to do some panels, email me, let me know. We'd love to have you. Next slide. And so let's just get on with this thing and turn this thing over to Simon. But as I sort of talked about before, if you have any questions, please use the Q&A piece, little item toolbar, click thing, menu item down below. And we want to make this thing interactive. So if you have any questions, please use that. I'll interrupt Simon within context and we'll get those things answered. Last slide. So today's guest is Simon Townsend, our Field CTO, and absolutely brilliant guy. So Simon, the floor is yours, and I'm going to try to figure out chat.
All right, you see if you can figure out chat. Keep an eye on Q&A. People, if you don't stop and ask questions, I will sadly talk for too long. So please try and jump in and also comment. Like if there's something you feel I'm missing or something you disagree with, or you're seeing something else going on in the industry that perhaps I've not mentioned, both myself, Doug, and ControlUp for that reason would love to hear it. But my big ask is please connect with me. My phone's always on. WhatsApp, iMessage, I'm happy to respond on that. I don't spend a great deal of time on X or Twitter, whatever it's called anymore. But if you want to connect with me on LinkedIn, then feel free to do that as well. And I just thank everybody that's on here. Another great turnout. And thank you, Doug, for continuing to to push the agenda around the community and to bring people together in the way that you do. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Sometimes when you sort of, I came back from holiday and I'd sort of started thinking before I went away what I was going to present and started putting some slides together. And then I took the dog for a walk yesterday morning and I suddenly went, how can I make this a little bit more interesting? And suddenly this stupid idea of trying to relate, what's going on in the world and what we're doing back to the Olympics suddenly came into my head and said, oh, that might make it a little bit more interesting. And so I went down this journey of creating some slides and trying to put a story together where I was comparing what's going on in the world with what we've just seen in the Olympics, etc. And by the time I got to the end of it, I thought, I'm not sure this is going to work, but I'm staying with it. So I enjoyed watching the Olympics over the last 2 weeks. I think the Olympics is a great representation of humanity. I love watching all of the different countries come together, and I love to watch all the different athletes compete, seeing both old and new sports, etc. So for that reason, I thought, well, you know what, let's try and learn something about the Olympics, and as we go through and learn about what we're seeing in the EUC space and ControlUp as well. Perhaps at the end, Doug, you can let me know whether it worked. But I thought I would abuse the logo and sort of just very at a high level talk to what I see happening, what I'm talking to a lot of people about at the moment. I think most people on this call will know that there is a lot going on in the world of VDI and desktop as a service, traditionally something we would refer to as the EUC market. There's a lot of movement going on there. Some people are having to make some very tough decisions. Some people are having to make some very fast decisions. Some people are moving, some people are staying where they are. And it's quite interesting to see how that's turning out, but it's presenting perhaps new challenges and new questions for some organizations in the EUC space. And it's opening up a lot of opportunities, certainly for us here at ControlUp. Windows 10, obviously, I think everyone knows that's going end of life, and there's a whole conversation around endpoints and the life of endpoints, for instance. We've seen in recent weeks, we've seen things around security threats, but also endpoint reliability. The workspace is becoming ever more hybrid. Sustainability, as I said, is thrown in there as well. And I think the DEX market as a whole, this thing that we refer to as digital employee experience, is also maturing. And I'm going to touch on some of these before I get on to some of the technology. It's interesting. I went back and took a look at, I don't know how many people watched this, but last week, the 100 meters, Noel Lyles obviously went into a photo finish, and he's there third from the bottom. And because his chest crossed the line first, he ended up winning. So congratulations to him. But, you compare that to Usain Bolt, for instance, back in 2018, there's a big difference between what's going on in that particular race this time round, in that, you've got everybody who's running in under 9 seconds. Everybody is extremely close. And hence, you could argue it is a more competitive market, and there is no one clear leader anymore. And I think the same probably could be said for how we look at the VDI and the desktop as a service world now. Products are maturing. Technologies are moving to the cloud. Have got things like Microsoft AVD, Windows 365 Cloud PC. We've got technologies like Parallels, which I know are growing at a phenomenal rate. Companies like HP Anywhere, WorkSpot, Dizion with their frame technology, Amazon Workspaces, both Amazon Workspace Core and Personal. And then you've got the whole rebrand going on with VMware and Omnissa. All of you guys know this already. All of you people, I should apologize, know this already. But I do think it's interesting. It's the first time that we've really seen the race be as close as it is, I think, right now. And it just gives people options. And, change is always going to be difficult. As I said, from my particular angle, I see a lot of organizations, particularly of size, continuing to invest in their Citrix and their VMware Horizon infrastructure. But I also see a lot of net new organizations now looking at VDI, and perhaps we'll come back to that. I think there's other reasons why people may be considering VDI desktop as a service moving forward. But one of the reasons I put this up is that ControlUp has, ControlUp was born 10, 12 years ago because of um, a requirement in Citrix. And we've partnered with Citrix extremely closely and continue to do so. And you'll see some things in the roadmap that we're doing with Citrix that are going to continue that, looking at how, for instance, user profile disks, as an example, looking at connection dashboards for Citrix and licensing. But we're also in a world now where we have to start, if we're not already, supporting these other technologies and starting to do some innovation in those areas as well. So some of the other things I want to touch on today is what we're doing around things like AVD, what, for instance, we could be doing around Parallel, Dizzy, and AWS, and also what we're doing around Windows 365. If you're British, you may well, this will be Tom Daly will be a household name for you. He, sadly, I don't think got gold this time round, but has got gold since at least 2014, I think it was. But he came back from the Olympics this time around and has announced that he's retiring. Quite sad for us Brits that have supported him. But the other thing that we know that is retiring in 429 days is obviously Windows 10. You can see what I did there. But, it's interesting. I'd welcome people's feedback on this. Historically, in the past, we've seen Windows migrations be very, very large projects that have taken huge amount of planning, huge amount of project time to actually get over. I'm not yet seeing that wave of Windows migrations. I think the latest statistics show that about 27% of Windows endpoints are running on Windows 11 and the rest are still on Windows 10. So, Windows 10 is going to go end of life in October. There are going to be options for people. Some people are going to have to pay for support, but it's going to be interesting to see whether people are just going to migrate over time or whether people are going to do those big bag migrations. But needless to say, that will come around pretty quick. The other thing I found really interesting when I was reading up before the Olympics started was these guns, these drone guns that the police had enabled themselves with. So to try and secure the Olympics in its entirety, they armed themselves with these laser guns, which were able to jam drones that may have been flying over the stable. And so, in the same time that CrowdStrike was taking down 8.5 million computers, the police in Paris were shooting down 53 drones. But it's interesting because it sparks up an interesting conversation around what we should have running on the endpoint. I know a lot of you will know that I'm ex-iGel, and we're big supporters here at ControlUp of both iGel, Strata Desk, Unicon, etc., and those types of secure operating systems. But it's interesting, is that recent news going to change people's opinion? Is that going to drive EUC further? Is that going to drive people back to VDI and desktop as a service? And we see an increase in that because of what happened then. There's a fine balance, isn't there, between making sure everything's secure and making sure that we don't go and take the world down. The last
there was a
thing
question. There was a question.
Oh, was there a question? Good.
Yeah, there was a question that says the parallels to the Olympics are, whoa, you can't see me. I turned off my camera as I was browsing for an answer. Are perfect. Can't wait to see a ray gun reference. The next slide, you do it.
There you go. I love it. And this one interests me. We were me and Doug were having a laugh over this one earlier this morning. But in Athens, 1896, 280 athletes, only men from 12 countries, did 9 different sports. Admittedly, they pulled in apparently 80,000 spectators to the event, but they didn't broadcast it. They didn't have social media. I mean, you take a look at you're up 10,500 athletes, 329 events across 32 sports, 9.5 million tickets sold, billions of viewers around the world, 32 million net new followers on social media. I mean, it just shows sort of not just the growth, but it just shows how technology is changing how people can interact. The whole concept actually of that marathon that they did, where they allowed 40,000 people to run the same marathon that the Olympians had run just a couple of hours later, I thought was extra special. It just means that more people can be involved. It's more inclusive, there are more options. And I think, when I think about options and what we have to deal with in end user compute, pre-COVID, dare I say that, those words, we've gone from office-based workers with desktops. We were either a fat client environment or we were a thin client environment. We secured everyone and did our migrations because everyone was in the office and we put firewalls around them. Life was a lot easier. And I think what's interesting right now in the market is that we have significantly more choice. And it's not just about hybrid work. I'm bored of hybrid work. It's about the hybrid workspace and the fact that it is a far more heterogeneous environment that we and many of you on this call are having to manage, right? You've got the rise of SaaS applications, which, is then introducing new technologies like the enterprise browser. Island is a technology that I've been following for some time, but I know Microsoft and Google are going to be doing something in that space as well. You've got organizations that are coming back around and taking a look at thin OSs such as the Argos and the Strata Desk, but you've also got other organizations that are saying, hey, what can we do perhaps with Chromebooks now as well? And then you've still got this long tail principle of Windows-based applications. I know many of you on this call would have spoken to this before, right? As much as we try our best to use as many SaaS-based applications as possible, many of our businesses are still built on Windows-based apps, and hence they're going to be around for a while, and hence we continue to need virtualization technology that can deliver Windows apps and Windows desktops. So it's really interesting from my point of view to see what's going on here. I definitely see more interest in 2024 in Windows 365 Cloud PC than I've seen in any previous year. But as I say, I think some of that is net new growth as opposed to replacement as well. The last thing I'll talk about before I pause is just what's going on in the world of the analyst and the deck space. You can see here a screenshot from the Gartner Digital Workspace Summit where they say that by 2025, 50% of all IT organizations will have an established DEX strategy. We are definitely seeing this. And, I've only been on board 6 months, and I can tell you that every single month, we are continuing to receive more and more RFPs, RFIs that come our way, asking us to complete them and quote for inclusion. And I think it just speaks to the fact that both at the IT administration level, IT support level, but also all the way through to the top, people are starting to realize the importance of measuring digital employee experience. And also looking at ways that they can remediate that automatically. We had a really good internal case study told to us last week where one of our customers on the East Coast of America has got 175,000 automations taking place every single day within their environment within ControlUp, which is a phenomenal amount of time saved and cost savings, for instance. So that's interesting. For those of you that know, Gartner is bringing out a Magic Quadrant. It'll be the first time they bring out a Magic Quadrant in the DEX space. I think it would be fair to say it's probably going to be out sometime around September, maybe a little bit earlier, maybe a bit later, who knows? But keep your eyes out on that. We've been doing a lot of work on that in recent months as well. Are there any questions, Doug?
No questions. If you guys have any questions, please ask.
Okay,
good. I love the bit about the the Windows apps. Sean Bass has a quote which I just absolutely love. When the world ends, there'll be cockroaches in Windows apps.
Yeah. They're not going anywhere anytime soon.
No,
but there is definitely I think one of the biggest challenges there, Doug, is it's not just the rise of SaaS-based applications, but the rise of shadow SaaS-based applications. I shouldn't do it, but I will do it. But ControlUp's a great example. 400 odd people in size. IT look after the desktop, they look after the security, they look after the Windows-based applications. But that doesn't stop a department rightly or wrongly, going and using a SaaS-based application for their own use. Now, it may well go to IT to get sanctioned and security checked to make sure it's compliant, which is what it does. But just because a department now needs access to a SaaS application or wants to go and use Monday.com or whatever it might be, right? As long as they're going through the right compliance hoops, it doesn't necessarily mean it's an application that IT is fully responsible for, right? They do the checks, but then they hand that back off and say, hey, marketing team, if you want to go and buy that, you go and buy that and you can use it. We've done everything we want. So, hey, it's interesting.
Yeah, and there's more and more of those. Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, I spend 95% of my day in the web browser, right?
There you go. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. There you go. So, from a very, very high level point of view, if you look back at where we've come from and where Dex has come from, I could easily argue that, at its very, very base level, it's monitoring. It's all about real-time monitoring. And typically, particularly for ControlUp, as most of you know, right? A monitoring tool used for Citrix, used by Citrix admin. So used by a small team, typically within IT, to monitor the environment. I think where we are today, we are what we would regard ourselves as a DEX platform. I think most of you now know we've got technologies that support the physical endpoint. It's really, really important for everyone on this call to understand as well, by the way, the amount of opportunity and the amount of business and deployments we're doing on physical is increasing at a phenomenal rate. DEX and ControlUp is no longer just about monitoring Citrix environments. And I'm talking 40,000, 50,000, 60,000 seats in size. People looking at monitoring their physical endpoint estate in addition to whatever they may well have in the virtualized estate. But I think that means that we've become a tool now that is used by more of IT, whether it's dashboards by C-level and IT directors, whether it is progress reports and custom dashboards by business owners, or the IT support desk in the console day in, day out, doing remediations, configuring those automations I spoke to. Dex is definitely a tool that can be consumed by all of IT, but it's also starting to touch other areas of IT in addition to EUC and also other parts of the business. We've got customers now where HR is paying for part of the Dex solution because they want to monitor employee well-being and do surveys, etc. You've got various conversations I'm having at the moment with customers around sustainability and partnerships that we're putting in place now so that our telemetry can be passed to other partners in this space to actually help organizations do their reporting for things like the CSRD, which is coming up next year. But then, we're also touching IT security, we're integrating into service management, we're integrating into UEM. And in some of those cases, we've done some nice things there around Enrich, which is the plugin for Intune. We've got the plugin for things like ServiceNow, so we can automatically raise tickets and bring them back. And then we've also obviously announced our Secure DX platform most recently, which sort of takes us into empowering IT admins to actually have a second pair of eyes on patching, vulnerability, device posture, etc. The future, something in me wants to call this Dex 2.0, or perhaps it will end up being called something else. Probably the analysts will end up giving it a completely different name. But I think what is becoming true is that the telemetry that we get from Dex can allow us to make far better business decisions and start to automate a lot of what we can do. If you start to think about the possibilities of having APIs that link your Dex platform to your UEM platform and your service management platform and your SIEM environment, for instance, you actually do start to actually realize some very powerful benefits by using the telemetry that things like a Dex platform can bring. Hopefully, most people on this call have already seen this diagram. This is the one slide I'd recommend everybody to screenshot and take away. If anyone ever wanted to say, what does ControlUp do? Well, we take a huge number of metrics from across the environment via agents and APIs, and we monitor and remediate across VDI and desktop as a service solutions, such as those listed up there, across physical endpoints, including those thin clients and others that are soon to come, and the applications, and look at endpoint security, and then look at the employees' sentiment to bubble all of that together to create what we are calling a DEX score. That's the idea. The whole intention here is to try and get to a point where it doesn't matter whether I'm logged on to a VDI machine, a physical desktop, whether it's my web-based app, my unified communications app, or the fact that I'm missing a patch, or that I've got the wrong version of a browser installed. I need IT to understand at a very, very high level what my overall DEX score is. And I need to be able to look at that across my business and very, very quickly identify if that's trending up or trending down. And if it is trending down, how do I then look at getting to root cause analysis and solving those issues, and hopefully putting some form of automation in place to do it. I'm not going to dwell on these too long, but I do just want to share them. When you think about DEX, we always, at ControlUp, we always think about the 3 Cs. The 3 Cs are collect, connect, and correct. We believe that a DEX solution should do all 3 of those things. A monitoring solution, for instance, would be very good at perhaps collecting data and then presenting it or connecting it in a dashboard, but it doesn't necessarily do the correction, the remediation. And I think we try and pride ourselves on those 3 Cs because we can do such frequent data collection every 3 seconds when we refer to real time, because we can go deep and we can also go wide. We can be looking at net scalars. We can be looking at inside the VM, outside the VM. We can be looking at the physical endpoint. We can be looking at the applications. We want to be looking at Windows 32-bit apps and 64-bit apps, and really cover that hybrid EUC environment that I spoke to before. The ability to connect the dots. We've spent a lot of time bringing smart prioritization into the product. If you look at all the different modules now, all of them are trying to prioritize automatically and raise the awareness of where issues may be, so you can do faster root cause analysis, but also bringing in things like the chatbot, which we've done this year, which is really the first step in empowering and putting AI into the DEX platform to look for anomaly detection and to help people find the information they need quicker. And then that remediation, being able to automate that, do that 175,000 automations, right? Log users off automatically if there's stale sessions, clean the team's cache down if it decides to crash. And there's a whole host of things that we want to do in this area as well. Like, we've not even spoken yet about things like self-service and how DEX could have an employee interaction to it. Imagine logging onto your desktop and the first thing you see in the morning is your DEX score on your start menu, as an example, or a widget down by the start menu that allows you to interact with the DEX platform and actually validate and highlight to IT that perhaps you are experiencing issues, and do that in a very efficient way that perhaps doesn't always require you to go into ServiceNow and raise a support ticket that takes you 15 minutes to do that. Let's be honest, not many people really want to do. Someone has asked a question.
Simon?
Yes.
Yeah, we have a question. Can I use ControlUp as ITAM? Asset management.
If you're talking about an endpoint or an operating system where we can be installed as part of our agent, I would suggest the answer to that is definitely yes. And if we get time, I'd happily show you some of those reports. But particularly on the physical side of the product, lightweight agent deployed out across my entire estate, constantly feeding information back up. In fact, within 3 minutes of deploying the agent, you'll have a load of information in the database. You'll have the serial number, you'll have the model number, you'll have the battery health, you'll have where the battery charging is at the moment, CPU, memory, hard disk space, where it is in the world. And then all of that information can then be used to then either connect to your manufacturer, say a Dell or a Lenovo as an example, pull warranty information back out. You could pass that information out to a third party for sustainability. So go and speak to someone like a PX3 and say, hey, look, take this asset management information for doing that. And so, yeah, there's a number of data points that we collect and reports that we bring out that would allow you to do ITAM. And that would be on the hardware side of things and arguably on the software side of things as well. So what applications are installed, what applications are being used, what different versions of applications are being used as well. Good. So sticking with my Olympics theme, which is yeah.
It's a hit, man. I love it. We love it.
You love it. Good.
You had us at ray gun.
It's not going to last too long. The ray gun just impressed me. I was like, how does that work? Anyway, what have you been up to in the last 6 to 12 months? I said I've been here 6 months. The team were busy 12, 18 months before I arrived, and they've done some phenomenal things. I mean, first and foremost, they've brought together arguably what was 3 or 4 different separate products into a single web-based platform, which is now known as that DEX platform. So a single web browser where someone can log on using Azure, Google, SAML, whatever it is, and have a single log on with role-based access to say, I want to manage everything. You know, do I want to manage physical endpoints, applications, user sentiment, VDI, etc. But there's been a huge amount of stuff that's been going on in each one of these separate areas that I wanted to just remind people of. I think an important one, you know, I was talking earlier about the rise of desktop as a service. We were talking about cloud PCs, AWS Personal, Windows 365. You know, one of the things that we have done in the VDI product is we have enabled what's called outbound 443 agent comms. That means that where the agent is installed on these AVD machines, that agent can now communicate outbound on a secure port. It doesn't rely on the monitors necessarily to be in the same location as where the agents were. Historically, you would have had agents on your Citrix servers, then you would have had ControlUp monitors in the same data center. They would have communicated over, I think, a 40706 port, something like that, one of the proprietary ports, and it would have been both ways. And that, you know, limited in some ways some of our deployments. And so as we're talking to customers about some of their new deployments and about some of the clever things that they may want to do, and it might not be for all of their infrastructure, but at least there is now ways in which we can deploy this technology in a number of different ways. We've also removed the prerequisites for these monitors to be domain joined. We've put PowerShell commandlets in place now. They're constantly being updated. Gentleman that works for me called Marcel is doing a phenomenal job with our development team, pushing them to the limits to make sure that you can do almost anything now in PowerShell when it comes to setting up ControlUp, including the monitors and the agents. And that just means that we can do far more when it comes to things like multi-site deployments, cloud deployments, and also MSP deployments as well. I think hopefully most of you know, but again, I think this is relevant as you look at people that are looking at moving from on-prem to the cloud. People worry about what machines they may need to move to and whether they're being utilized. I don't think many people just want to do a lift and a shift. But one of the key reports that we talk to a lot at the moment is our sizing, recommendation, and costing reports. This is taking the real-time data that we collect, storing it for historical purposes, and then looking at that and right-sizing them. So looking at on a machine-by-machine basis, looking at, is that machine being underutilized? Is it being stressed? Does it need more CPU? Does it need more memory? And then importantly, allowing you from the same console to connect to Azure to then say, okay, fine, based on that usage and based on those machines, what would the recommendations be for the machines in Azure? Okay, as you can see here, I need a whole host of standard F4 machines with 2 CPUs and 6 gigabyte of RAM, which are going to take, which are going to cost you somewhere in the region of $165 per month. You can take that information as an example, and then you could go to, dare I say, someone like a Nerdio, and you could say, hey, look, I've looked at what I'm using currently on-prem. I've looked at what I might move to in the cloud. Now, can you come along there and tell me how much you can optimize that by, right? And they may be able to bring that 165 down by an amount. And there's probably other technologies out there, which I know there are, that will also do that level of optimization, right? Citrix has got the ability to do it. VMware's got the ability to do it. Parallels has got the ability to do it, right? But it at least gives you an idea of, are my machines being utilized and how much may they cost me if I move?
I'm on mute. We have some questions. You ready?
Yeah, go.
Okay, first of all, we love the Olympics theme. Thanks, Patricia. I do too.
Cool.
Let's see. What would an integration with ControlUp in an island browser look like?
Very good. I'd like to come back to that one if I may, because part of that is all around looking at applications in a slightly different way. And that would apply to an island browser, it would apply to an Edge browser, it would apply to a Chromium browser. One of the things that we do today is in the VDI product, at the very least, and a little bit in the physical endpoint, is we can track applications that are in the foreground. And if those applications are in the foreground and it happens to be a web browser, what URL that person is going to. But today, from a real-time monitoring point of view, that is about as far as we can go. Do I have Chrome in the foreground? Yep. Okay. What tabs are open and what websites am I going to? Not necessarily monitoring the employee experience or the performance of that web page. Now, if I want to do that, what I can do is that I can go and use synthetic testing in the product. And synthetic testing would allow me to start to fire off some virtual sessions to measure that connectivity. You can see here that, we've got the ability to look at the tabs, we've got the ability to look at the browser URL that's being accessed from within the console. But if I skip through to, sorry, I'm dashing forward here, synthetic testing of web-based transactions, one of the things that we can also do today is we can look at, okay, I want to synthetic test a website and or a web transaction. And one of the things that we haven't made too big a shout about this, and I actually think this is a very, very neat feature. There is a plugin you can see here where I've got the arrow highlighted in my web browser. So if you go to the Google Chrome store, you'll find a ControlUp extension that can be loaded, and it's a recorder. So it basically records me or a synthetic user logging onto something like Salesforce, putting in my username and my password, clicking on some buttons, performing some searches, going into opportunities. It would work with any SaaS-based application. It records that and then it puts that into the configuration on the top left-hand side of the screen. And it basically says, okay, fine, I want you from one of the locations, could be in the cloud, it could be a custom hive, one of the hives that we've got around the globe. I want you every 5 minutes or every 60 minutes to go and carry out that web transaction or ping that website address. I've got one of these set up in my garage, for instance, next door to me. And every 60 minutes, I'm pinging the BBC website and it's giving me a detailed report like what we get on the right-hand side here, breaking down, okay, where did the delay, how long did that transaction take? How long did that HTTP request take? I'm sure most of you already know we can do the same with logging on to a VDI desktop or logging on to or testing infrastructure. The web transactions piece was new this year and came with that plugin that I highlight there. But in terms of in answer to the question specifically, what would integration look like? What we really want to get to is a place where we are able to monitor that web transaction and that loading of the performance of that web-based application in real time, in addition to be able to do in synthetic testing. And that is something that we are actively working on. It's something that you are going to see come from ControlUp in before the end of the year. We actually acquired an organization at the end of last year called Avanite, who were specialists in this area. And in answer to your question, if that real-time monitoring of web-based applications supports Chrome and it supports Edge, then there's no reason why it couldn't support an island browser. And that would actually complement things quite nicely, because you end up with a secure enterprise browser that we would then monitor the experience of and the applications that were being loaded through it. Wow, we've got a lot of
We have a lot of
going on.
questions. So do you want to take
Okay.
some questions for a little bit?
Just keep keep taking questions. It's good.
Perfect.
Yeah,
That's what I
let's
like.
go for
That's
it.
what I like.
Go for it.
So, and you can switch through slides and answer them as you need. So
Exactly.
does the calculation deck score? Is that what you, or does the calculation account for or discard the time a VDI is idle or even powered off?
I think that was referring to the sizing and the recommendations
Oh,
of
that's
that.
right. Yeah.
I'm not sure. I'm going to need to come back to on the idle question. And there may be a few people on this call that may be able to answer that for you, but we definitely do take into consideration what we would call working day. So we do actually look at, okay, well, working day could be between the hours of 9 till X, 9 till 5, whatever it might be. And therefore, a lot of the calculations that we do are based on that time frame. I'm not sure though whether we respect whether the machine has got idle or not. I need to take that one offline. That one's a little bit too in depth for me.
Perfect. See, what is the priority of creating an API into Dex and not just the Edge DX API?
Okay, let's roll it forward.
Creating an API into Dex.
Hello.
That was my phone.
Okay, so we're now looking forward, as we did at the Olympics when they took the torch to LA and got Mr. Dr. Dre and Snoop on stage. So APIs, we currently support. Bear with me. As the question quite rightly asks, what is the priority of current endpoint and not just the edge? So, Kelly, I think that was you. You're right. Today we have an API available for our physical endpoint solution, which means that we can fire, which is Edge, which means we can fire APIs into Edge. We can pull information out. We can actually fire a query into the database. That's the right way of doing it. The right way of doing it is to fire a query via the API and let the Elasticsearch engine do the query and return you the results. We are, I'm pleased to say, just going into beta with our new single API interface. And this would be for all products, everything that ControlUp does. We're actually going to leave, Kelly, physical endpoints alone for now, just for the short term. So you're going to access physical endpoint Edge DX via one API, as you do today. The new platform, which people can come and request to be part of the beta program, will give you a new single API interface that is configured through the Dex platform. It allows you to do things like look at the auditing logs, user creation, user deletion, that type of thing. And it also then includes all of the VDI and the DAS historical reports and the data that comes out of that. So this new single interface, just going into beta, it will allow you to use the API on the platform and also use the API for some of your reports. And what will simply happen is once we've got to the end of that beta phase and that goes GA, we'll then start working on bringing the physical endpoint API that exists today underneath the new single interface that everything else is using. Okay.
Perfect.
ControlUp is an agent-based or agentless monitoring. It's both. if you want to dive, what should we do here? What should we do here, Doug? What should we do? Sorry, bear with me. I'm trying to be clever. Let's see if we can do this. Share. You see a different screen now, Doug?
It's loading.
Let's go to details. If I take a look at my VDI environment, across the top here, I've got a complete picture of my environment: NetScalers, gateways, load balancers, AVD workspaces, host pools, data centers, subscriptions, resource groups. This picture and the drill downs that we're able to do is being pulled by both agent and agentless technology. So I'm using an API call to go to Azure. I'm using an API call to talk to Citrix Cloud, but I've also got agents installed on all of my 104 virtual machines, which is then giving me visibility into what's going on from a user session and a process point of view. And because I've got an agent installed on all of those machines, that is also then giving me the ability to do my remediation, which is obviously where things come in. So in answer to your question, it is both agent and agentless. And typically when it's agentless, it's typically some form of API or a connector that we're making back to an underlying hypervisor or a cloud service. Coming to Azure Virtual Desktop, what extra benefits or value add compared to Azure native monitoring and insights? Well, when we talk about Azure, and we specifically talk about Azure Virtual Desktop, we're really talking about first of all, I go back to those 3 C's. So collecting information is one thing, presenting it is another, and remediating it is something else. And I think ControlUp gives you all of that, and importantly, gives you all of that in real time. So I would argue that some of the performance monitoring and some of the performance metrics that are available in the native tools, such as what you may get and may be able to pull out of AVD, you're not necessarily getting that in real time. If someone logs on to one of your AVD sessions, as they could do, or a cloud PC, as they could do here now, and if that CPU goes up 3 seconds ago, that is going to be visible in this console straight away. And then just the sheer number of metrics that we are collecting in terms of log-on times, log-on time breakdown, application launch times, latency. Also looking at, for instance, if I go and take a look at a user session now, and I go and take a look at something called Remote DX, I've got the ability here that not only can I see what's going on with a particular session and what the impact of that is on the server I'm logging onto, but I'm also able to go and take a look at the client side metrics. So, the monitoring tools that you're going to get in Azure are going to tell you what's going on in Azure, not necessarily going to give you as granular real-time information inside the VM, but it's certainly not then going to tell you what does my connectivity look like. And, most of my experience tells me that, when someone calls up the help desk and says, hey, you've just moved me from Citrix to AVD, I've just gone from a Windows endpoint to an IGEL endpoint, and now I'm getting disconnects. Okay, well, is it IGEL or is it AVD or is it something else? And 9 times out of 10, it's because someone's plugged in Ethernet over power connectors or their Wi-Fi connectivity or it's got nothing to do with the new technology that's been deployed. So having that level of visibility, I think, is important. I'm going to have to come back on some of the sizing stuff. There's a couple of people asking on those. They seem to be asking similar questions around the sizing. What are the key takeaway features and value for a customer not using VDI and desktop as a service? Well, that is full visibility over your entire desktop estate, regardless of whether it is a Mac, a Linux device, or a Windows endpoint. And that really is going down to make sure that we can understand all of the devices that are in use. As you can see here, 53 devices, understanding whether, for instance, they're performing well, what their logon times are like, raising alerts when there are issues with machine metrics, application metrics, networking metrics, whatever that might be, and being able to measure that performance and user experience across the board. So this is purely what you're looking at now is purely on my physical endpoints. I can see that I've got 80 blue screens that have been happening in this particular time period. That's just today. That's because this is a test environment and we've got a number of machines in our environment that constantly blue screen. I've got some application crashes. I've got some machines that are missing patches. I've got 2 machines, in fact, which have got battery health issues, which again, we could fully automate and you could send a request off to Lenovo and get them to ship you 2 new batteries proactively to do that. I can see that I've got some Wi-Fi issues going on here. I may want to come down and take a look at average input delay, logon times. I can see I've got an outlier here with a logon time of 32 seconds. I've got the ability to, again, drill down into that and actually understand which logon it was for which user, but also more importantly, which registry key, group policy setting, profile size was actually causing that slow logon time, for instance. And then I've got a whole host of reports that I can run. Someone asked earlier around asset management. You can see here, if I drill down into here, hardware and operating systems, I've got all of the devices that I've got in my environment. I can choose various different filters. I can see what operating system they're running, what version of Windows they're running, what the battery health is like, CPU, memory, etc. And I can do that across the board with various different reports, looking at network interfaces, connected monitors, how many times machines are rebooting, what applications are installed, what versions of applications are installed. And something we added most recently was that ability to actually go and check whether machines were ready for Windows 11. And so here in my particular environment, you can see here, I've got 12 machines that are not running Windows 11 right now. And it goes through and lists those Windows machines that are currently running 10 and why they have failed the Windows 11 check. So in this particular case, CPU, TPM, secure boot, disk size, whatever it might be, there's a number of machines in my environment that would not support Windows 11 at the moment. I can either choose to either replace those or go and do something about it and fix them, perhaps replace RAM, perhaps turn on the TPM chip, who knows? But at least it's given me visibility in a very, very easy to consume report. Okay. What else we got? Are we out of time as well?
Yeah, we're pretty much there. I was gonna say, we should have you back on just for a lively Q&A.
We should.
Yeah, we do. We'll put that on the agenda for sure. I guess
really
if there's any browse through there, if there's anything else that you see.
I'm just gonna touch on a couple of things. Just to wrap up. There's a whole host of stuff that we've done, but as I look just forward now over the next couple of months, I just want to sort of call some things out. Edge support or Windows 365 support is coming to Edge. So I have got Windows 365 cloud PCs in my environment now. I can monitor them with the VDI product and have complete end-to-end visibility. I could, in fact, if I wanted to do an even easier and simpler deployment, I could actually deploy them with the physical endpoint technology. What we are bringing to market in the next couple of months is just support for Windows 365 in that physical endpoint product. So that's the ability to look at things like protocol metrics and the connecting device from within the Edge product. Our thought process here is that if you're going down a route of VDI to desktop as a service, multi-session, etc., then you're going to stay with the VDI desktop as a service product. But if you're going with something like Cloud PC, which is a persistent PC, which is always up and running, you've probably got it being managed by Intune, and every user's probably got a laptop that's also in Intune, then actually you just want one DEX solution for that. And that means that we're gonna put some additional features into our physical endpoint product to support Windows 365, Cloud PC, and other technologies that are similar to that. We are, as we've said, really looking at web-based applications. I can talk you through that in a second. We are bringing out some additional connection failure dashboards and some licensing dashboards on the Citrix side of things. We're doing some very good improvements to remote control. Remote control is a tool that a huge number of organizations are now using within ControlUp. In fact, we've won a number of tenders recently where people have been looking at going down the route of a DEX solution, but also wanting to replace their incumbent RMM or remote control tool. Remote control is a big part of the product, and that's getting some love and attention. We continue to optimize unified communication, so measure Teams and Zoom calls, but we're hopefully going to bring a refreshed dashboard out that allows you to support a few more. We're bringing some additional synthetic testing out, which is going to allow you to do send and receiving of emails as well, to do synthetic testing on the exchange. We currently have got thin client support, IGL Strata Desk, Mac I spoke to, Windows support. We don't currently have Chrome support, but I can tell you that that's coming. That means if you're using Chrome to connect into a virtual desktop environment, we can see Chrome as the connecting endpoint. We're also looking at how we would do full-blown DEX support on a Chrome device as well, in the same way that I just showed you with those Windows devices. I spoke about Windows 365. We've spoken about the APIs. And the last thing to sort of talk to is, what we would be doing around those web-based applications. If you think about what we do at the moment, bottom left, we're really monitoring what's going on the hardware. We're monitoring what's going on the network. We're monitoring what's going on in the 32-bit, 64-bit app. We just want to extend that out so we can provide real-time data for web-based applications as well. And all of that, as I said, sort of comes together quite nicely to produce this employee score. And when it comes to the DEX score, I'll finish on this. If no one's had a look at the employee dashboards, please do. When you look in the console now, we've got a number of different modules and technologies down the left-hand side. We've not even spoken about SecureDX that much today, which is looking at patching, vulnerability assessment, and device posture. But whether it's security, whether it's synthetic testing, whether it's employee surveys, whether it's VDI, desktop as a service, or physical endpoints, we really are trying to get to a point where anybody should start here, which is clicking on the employee icon and being able to see, okay, across my estate, what does my performance look like, and how do I start to drill down on a user basis to understand what is going on and what might be affecting poor performance. And so if people want to take a closer look at that, I'm more than happy to do that as well.
Perfect. Simon, I thank you so very much. There were a couple comments, please bring Simon on for Q&A. So I will bug you for a time for that if you don't mind.
Okay.
Yeah. So on that note, everyone, I thank you all for attending this Control Community Meetup. I hope you enjoyed it. We'll definitely be doing more of these with Simon and others. If any recommendations on folks or technologies or anything you would like to present, discuss, share, please let me know. Email me, direct message me, what have you. db@controlup.com works. And on that note, Simon, I truly appreciate your time today. Absolutely wonderful. We could listen to you forever. At least I could. So
yeah, no worries.
Any last words?
There's a number of people that have got questions there. Simon.Townsend@controlup.com. Drop me an email, and if I can't answer your question, I will find someone that can, and that will be my commitment. And I apologize that we went off at a tangent, but I think sometimes, Doug, these things are better if yeah, if people are asking questions, I'd much rather try and answer them. So
Absolutely,
yeah,
absolutely. I always say with the control community meetups, we're not trying to be a polished event. We're trying to go with the flow. We're trying to have a conversation. We're trying to, it's for you. So if you have a question, hey, we're going to answer that question before we're going to go do something else. So I love it. Absolutely love it. I wish we had more time. It's great that we, run out of time, right? We have too much to talk about. We'll pick it up next time. And,
well,
and if you do have questions, folks, please join the community. Feel free to ask them in there. It doesn't have to be a support question. If you have, theoretical questions, ask those. Those are my favorites. Simon, you wanted to add one more thing?
no, I'm all good.
Okay. Well, on that note, what do I say? Simon, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. I hope you have a very pleasant night. We look forward to having you back on. And to everyone out there, thank you all for listening. I hope you enjoyed it. And again, if you have any suggestions for the future or anything we can do better, please let me know. DB at ControlUp or Douglas Stepron at ControlUp.com. On that note, have a great day, everyone.
Good night, people. Thanks, Doug.
As we say in Deutschland, tschüss.
Tschüss.